The automatic doors to Mercy Harbor Medical Center side shut behind her, and for one sweet second, Lena Sato thought the night was finally over. Her hair was twisted into a damp knot. Her scrub smelled faintly of antiseptic and coffee that had gone cold 3 hours ago. The floor beneath her sneakers felt like it was still moving, the way it always did after a 12-hour shift in the ED, like your body couldn't remember what standing still was. She took 2 steps toward the employee exit and heard it. Not a scream, not the frantic, familiar chaos of a trauma roll-in. A different kind of sound. Boots, fast, coordinated. The heavy, deliberate cadence of people who didn't run unless it mattered. Lena turned. 3 men in civilian clothes moved through the lobby like they owned the oxygen. They weren't loud. They didn't have to be. Their presence made the security guard at the front desk straighten as if pulled by an invisible cord. And then, as if the building itself had been waiting for them, a 4th figure entered behind them. Taller, broader, moving with a controlled urgency that made even the late-night visitors hush. The man at the front of the group scanned the room once, eyes like a searchlight, and then locked onto Lena. He didn't ask her name. He didn't hesitate. He walked up, stopped exactly 2 feet from her, and said, clear as a bell in the quiet lobby, "Ma'am." The word hit like a slap, not insulting, not mocking, just wrong somehow, like calling a tired nurse Your Honor. Lena blinked, "I'm sorry." Behind him, the other men had fanned out, not aggressive, not threatening, but unmistakably alert. One of them spoke softly into a sleeve mic that Lena was fairly sure didn't exist in normal civilian wardrobes. The first man didn't repeat himself. He nodded, almost respectfully, as if confirming something only he could see. "We need you," he said, "right now." Lena's throat tightened, because she knew that tone. Not from hospitals. From somewhere older, somewhere she didn't talk about anymore. And as she stood there in wrinkled scrubs, dead tired and already halfway out the door, Lena realized the night wasn't ending. It was beginning. Pause. Before we go any further, just know this. What you're about to hear is a fictional story, built to feel real, to sound true, and to hit that moral nerve we all recognize when we see competence dismissed and integrity tested. If you like stories where quiet professionalism wins in the end, you're in the right place. Now, Mercy Harbor Medical Center sat on the edge of San Diego, close enough to the coast that the air carried salt even inside the parking garage. It was a sprawling, glass-fronted facility with a reputation for elite care, which mostly meant it served wealthy neighborhoods, visiting executives, and the occasional high-profile patient whose name ended up whispered in break rooms. The emergency department, though, was its own world. Harsh fluorescent lights, the constant beep-and breath soundtrack of monitors, the smell of alcohol wipes and stress, a waiting room that never truly emptied, people in pain, people angry, people scared, people pretending they weren't scared. And then there was the hierarchy. Not the official one on org charts. The real one. The one made of who got listened to, who got blamed, and who got quietly pushed to the edges. At the top of that unspoken ladder on nights like Lena's stood charge nurse Vicki Rourke. Vicki had been at Mercy Harbor long enough that people spoke her name like weather. She didn't just run the floor, she controlled it. Assignments, breaks, who got the easy rooms, who got the messy ones. She wasn't stupid either. Vicki knew exactly how to keep her hands clean while making someone else's life harder. She smiled a lot, that was the trick. She smiled when she corrected you in front of a doctor. Smiled when she misplaced your documentation and asked you to redo it. Smiled when she praised you in a tone that made it sound like an insult. Lena had learned early to keep her face neutral around her. It wasn't that Lena was weak. If anything, the opposite. She was steady in a way that made people either trust her immediately or resent her for not breaking when they expected her to. Lena Sato was 32, an ED nurse with a clean record, near-perfect attendance, and a habit of saying "copy that" instead of "okay." Her defining traits were simple: calm under pressure, precise with her hands, and almost unnervingly polite. Most people assumed she was just quiet. Maybe shy, maybe submissive. Vicki certainly did. "You don't need to be so intense, Lena," Vicki would say, laughing lightly when Lena double-checked a medication dose. "We're not in the military." The other nurses would chuckle because Vicki had laughed. Lena would nod once and continue, as if the comment didn't matter. But it did. Not because it hurt her feelings. Because it was a reminder, they didn't see her, not really. And in Mercy Harbor's AD, being unseen was dangerous. 2 breadcrumbs about Lena's life kept slipping out, no matter how carefully she kept her past folded away. The first was language. Every now and then, under stress, Lena's voice changed slightly, flattened, clipped. She'd say things like "stand by," or "I've got eyes," or "we're good to move." It wasn't wrong exactly, just not hospital speak. The second was the scar. A faint, pale line at the base of her neck, almost hidden under her hairline. If you looked too long, she'd adjust her ponytail like she'd done it 1,000 times. No one asked about it. Not in a place like Mercy Harbor, where people learned to mind their own business. And then there was the third breadcrumb, the one Vicky liked to use as a weapon. Lena's record said she'd spent several years in Virginia before moving to California. When Vicky found that out, she started calling Lena East Coast, in the same tone someone might say weird. "So East Coast," Vicky would say in front of others, "you ever miss your little military base life?" Lena would keep charting, "I don't miss traffic." It made people laugh. It made Vicky grin. And Lena learned, again, that the easiest way to survive a small cruelty was to give it nothing to latch onto. If you're already invested in this, if you already want to see what makes a woman like Lena get called "ma'am" by men who look like they've walked out of a classified briefing, take a second and tap subscribe. You're in the middle of a slow burn payoff, and I promise it lands. That night, the one that should have ended quietly, had started like any other. A rotating parade of fevers, falls, chest pains, and the occasional intoxicated patient trying to fight a blood pressure cuff. Near the end of Lena's shift, a new patient came in, brought by private vehicle, not ambulance. That was unusual for anything serious in that area. The patient was a man in his late 50s, dressed plainly, baseball cap pulled low. 2 men accompanied him, both the kind of fit that didn't come from CrossFit selfies. They moved with a careful protectiveness, but they didn't announce themselves. No one did. Not at first. The man's complaint was simple: dizziness, shortness of breath, fatigue. But Lena had learned, really learned, that the body lies in polite ways before it screams. She took the vitals herself, even though a tech offered. Blood pressure borderline low. Heart rate too steady, too slow, like it was conserving. Skin slightly cool. And his eyes had that distant focus of someone fighting to stay upright inside their own skull. Lena didn't panic. She didn't perform urgency. She just moved. "Let's get him to room 8, she said. "Monitor 12 lead labs, oxygen at 2 liters for comfort." One of the accompanying men frowned. "He doesn't need." Lena turned her head slightly, not confrontational, just firm. "He needs it." The man stared at her, surprised at the tone, then nodded as if he recognized something. Room 8 was busy. It had been turned over fast. The monitor leads were tangled. Lena untangled them with quick, efficient hands. A resident wandered in. Dr. Patel, young, smart, tired. "What have we got?" "Male, late 50s, Lena said, already placing electrodes. "Dizziness, dyspnea, fatigue, bradycardic, hypotensive, borderline. I want a 12 lead now." Dr. Patel hesitated half a second. "Okay, but..." The monitor beeped once, then twice. The rhythm looked deceptively calm. Lena's eyes narrowed. Because calm rhythms could kill you if you were distracted. She watched the man's breathing, the subtle way his chest moved, the slight tremor in his fingers. She asked one question softly, close enough for only him to hear. "Sir, have you been exposed to anything unusual in the last 24 hours? New meds, chemicals, anything in your environment?" The man's eyes flicked to hers, a long beat. Then he whispered, "Maybe." That was all. But it was enough. Because in the ID, maybe meant yes. The 12 lead printed. Lena glanced at it once. Just once. And then her entire posture shifted. Not alarm, not fear, something else. Recognition. She handed it to Dr. Patel. "Look at the intervals," she said. Patel did, his brows knitted. The PR interval was stretched, The conduction, it wasn't right. "What is that?" he murmured. Lena didn't answer yet. She stepped to the door, looked out, and saw Vicky walking by with a clipboard and her usual half-smile. "Charge," Lena called, voice steady. Vicky turned, already annoyed. "What?" "I need a crash cart staged," Lena said. "And I need pharmacy alerted, possible toxin exposure." Vicky laughed, actually laughed. "A crash cart for dizziness." Lena didn't blink. "Yes." Vicky's smile thinned. "You're being dramatic," we're slammed Lena. Dr. Patel looked up from the EKG, now less certain. Vicky." Vicky cut him off with a gentle hand. "Doctor, it's fine, she's just cautious." Lena looked at Vicky, face unreadable. "Stage it anyway." That command, because that's what it was, hung in the air. Vicky's eyes sharpened. "Excuse me." Lena's voice stayed level. "Stage the crash cart." For a second, it was like the lights themselves got brighter. Then Vicky smiled again, sweet as syrup. "No." And she walked away. Dr. Patel stared after her, then back at Lena. "We can." The monitor beeped again. This time, the man's eyelids fluttered. His chin dipped. His oxygen saturation slid down 2 points. Lena didn't argue. She didn't chase Vicky down. She did what competent people do when someone blocks them. She found another route. She stepped out, snapped her fingers at a passing tech. "Crash cart to room 8 now." The tech hesitated. "Charge," said. Lena's eyes locked on his, calm, clear. "Now," she repeated. The tech moved. And in that moment, 2 other nurses watched Lena with an expression that wasn't exactly respect yet, but it was no longer dismissal. Because they'd heard that tone. They didn't know where, but they knew it meant business. Pause. If you've ever watched someone competent get ignored because they don't play the social game, you already know how dangerous this part is. Drop a comment with the word "steady" if you're rooting for Lena right now, because the next few minutes are where quiet skill starts to cost her. Back in room 8, Lena worked with clean efficiency. She drew labs, started an IV, reassessed the patient's airway and breathing, kept her questions short. The 2 men with the patient hovered near the wall, eyes scanning the room like it was a perimeter, not a hospital bay. Dr. Patel ordered fluids, then hesitated over medication. "Could be a conduction issue," he said. "Maybe." Lena leaned closer to the monitor. "This isn't just conduction, he's compensating. Something is pushing his system down." Patel swallowed. "What makes you think toxin?" Lena didn't dramatize it. She pointed. "Skin temperature, pattern of fatigue, the way his pupils react." And he said maybe when I asked about exposure. Patel looked at the patient, then at the men with him. "Sir, are you?" One of the men stepped forward. "He's here for treatment, that's all you need to know." Patel's jaw tightened, but Lena's tone softened slightly. "We don't need names, we need information. If you know what he was exposed to, tell me." The man's eyes met hers, and something unspoken passed between them. Not flirtation, not intimidation. Recognition. He leaned in, voice low. "Possible organophosphate." Patel blinked. "Like pesticides." The man didn't answer. Lena did. "Like nerve agents," she said quietly. Patel's face drained. Lena was already moving. "Atropine on standby. Prepare for worsening bradycardia. Get respiratory ready." Patel stared at her. "How do you?" Lena didn't finish the thought. She couldn't, not here. The patient's heart rate dropped again. His breathing became shallow. Lena's hands stayed steady as she adjusted oxygen and positioned him for airway support if needed. She spoke to him softly. "Stay with me, sir. Look at my face. Breathe with me. In, out." His eyes flickered. He fought like a man who'd fought his whole life. Then the monitor alarmed. A long, ugly tone. Patel cursed under his breath. "He's..." Lena's voice cut through. "Start compressions if he loses pulse. Get the card in here." The tech rolled it in, breathless. And then, finally, Vicky appeared in the doorway, drawn by the sound. "What is going on?" she demanded, as if chaos had personally offended her. Patel snapped. "We need atropine now." Vicky's eyes widened slightly, but she recovered. "Why wasn't I told?" Lena didn't look at her, because you said no. Vicky's cheeks flushed. Don't talk to me like. The patient gagged, coughed, and then went limp. For half a second, the room became silent in a way that was almost holy. And that's when the room changed. Lena checked for a pulse. Nothing. She didn't freeze. She didn't plead. CPR, she said, already positioning hands. Patel moved in. Another nurse grabbed the bag valve mask. Lena counted compressions with a cadence that was almost metronomic. 1, 2, 3. No wasted motion, no frantic flailing. Vicky hovered, useless, watching her authority evaporate in real time. Lena's voice stayed calm. Atropine, now, then prepare pralidoxime per protocol, get tox, consult on the phone. Patel looked at her mid-compression. You know the dosing. Yes, Lena said, I know. They got a rhythm. They got medication in. They got oxygen moving. Minutes stretched like rubber bands ready to snap. And then a blip. A faint pulse. Then stronger. The monitor shifted into a rhythm that wasn't perfect, but was alive. The patient drew a shallow breath. Patel exhaled hard, eyes wide. We got him. The two men by the wall didn't celebrate. They just nodded once. Like they'd expected survival but appreciated competence. Vicky, however, found her voice again. Well, she said too loudly, I'm glad that's resolved, but we need to discuss why you escalated without going through me. Lena's hands were still on the patient's wrist, feeling the pulse stabilize. She didn't look up. I escalated because he was dying, she said. Vicky's smile returned, brittle. You're not the doctor, Lena. Patel spoke, voice unsteady. She saved. Vicky cut him off. Doctor, with respect, nursing workflow matters. Lena finally lifted her gaze to Vicky, and her eyes were flat as still water. Workflow doesn't matter if the patient is dead, she said. Vicky's nostrils flared. And in that tiny moment, Lena understood something she'd tried not to admit since starting at Mercy Harbor. Vicky wasn't just petty. She was dangerous. Pause. If you're feeling that frustration building, the kind that comes when someone's ego matters more to them than doing the right thing, stay close. And if you want more stories where competence is the quiet weapon, hit like. It tells me you want the next one. The patient was stabilized and transferred to ICU with a tight protective bubble around him. Respiratory, pharmacy, toxicology, all moving faster now because the proof of danger had become undeniable. And Lena thought, foolishly, that the night might end with a tired kind of relief. She should have known better. Because injustice doesn't always come in the form of screaming or firing on the spot. Sometimes it comes in a calm voice with a clipboard. At 6:45 a.m., 15 minutes before shift change, Vicky called Lena into the charge office. It was small, too bright, smelled like lemon disinfectant and stale printer ink. Vicky shut the door. Lena remained standing. Vicky sat, folding her hands like a counselor. I'm going to keep this professional, she began. Lena waited. Vicky slid a paper across the desk. It was a write-up. Failure to follow chain of command, it read. Insubordination, creating unnecessary panic, unauthorized delegation. Lena stared at it. Not because she didn't understand. Because she did. Vicky leaned back. I appreciate initiative, I do, but you can't just take over. Lena's voice was quiet. He coded. Vicky's smile twitched, and it was handled by the team. Lena's jaw tightened. By the team, after I staged what you refused. Vicky's eyes hardened, careful. Lena looked at her. You want me to sign this? It's just acknowledgement, Vicky said smoothly. Sign it and we move on. Lena felt something old rise in her chest. Not rage, exactly. A memory of rooms where people tried to corner you into accepting their version of events. She exhaled once. I won't sign something that's false. Vicky's tone sharpened. Then you're refusing a lawful directive. Lena's eyes flicked to the paper again. This wasn't about protocol. This was about control. Vicky leaned forward. You've been difficult lately, Lena. You don't blend. You make people uncomfortable. Lena didn't respond. Vicky continued, voice softer, more poisonous. And now you've embarrassed me in front of a resident. Lena's gaze lifted. I didn't embarrass you, you embarrassed yourself. For a heartbeat, Vicky looked genuinely stunned. Then her lips thinned. Fine. She stood, opened the door, and called out loudly enough for the nurses stationed to hear. Lena Sato is being placed on immediate review pending HR investigation for insubordination. Heads turned. Conversation stopped. A couple nurses glanced at Lena with that familiar mix of curiosity and relief. It's not me. The humiliation wasn't loud. It was surgical. Lena walked out of the office with her spine straight, face calm, hands slightly trembling at her sides, not from fear, but from the effort of restraint. Vicky announced, "You can turn in your badge at the desk." Lena stopped. She looked at the nurses' station, the people who had watched her perform CPR, watched her fight for that patient's life. Some looked away. Some looked conflicted. Dr. Patel stepped out from a room, eyes widening. What, why? Vicky smiled at him like he was a child. Doctor, you focus on medicine, I'll handle staff behavior. Lena met Patel's gaze and gave a tiny shake of her head. Don't fight this for me. Not here, not like this. Because Lena knew something else too. Fighting loudly in a broken system often just gives it more excuses to crush you. So she did the only thing she could do with dignity and tact. She turned toward the employee exit again. She started walking toward it once already tonight. Now she walked toward it with her job unraveling behind her like a thread being pulled. And that's when the lobby doors opened. Boots, fast, coordinated, and a voice calling her ma'am. Pause. Before the next reveal hits, take a second to subscribe if you want the full ride. You're about to see what happens when one with real authority walks into a room, and the bullies realize they've been playing a game they don't understand. The men moved through the lobby with purpose, bypassing the front desk as if they'd already cleared every checkpoint. The security guard, wide-eyed, didn't stop them. He couldn't have if he wanted to. The lead man stopped in front of Lena again. Ma'am, he repeated, softer this time, like he understood the word might not belong in a hospital lobby. Lena's voice was controlled. You've got the wrong person. One of the men behind him spoke quietly. No, we don't. Vicky's voice floated from behind, sharp with irritation. Excuse me, this is a hospital. Who are you people? The lead man turned his head slightly, acknowledging her like you might acknowledge a barking dog without giving it power. Ma'am, he said to Lena again, we're requesting your assistance. Vicky stepped closer, trying to reclaim the stage. She's an employee under investigation. She is not available. The lead man finally looked at Vicky fully. His eyes were calm, but something in them made the air feel colder. She's available, he said. Vicky puffed up. And who exactly are you to decide that? The man reached into his jacket, produced an ID wallet, flashed it quickly. Vicky didn't even get a real look, just a glimpse of seal, letters, authority. Her mouth opened, then closed. Another man in the group spoke into a mic again, low. Package is stable. Transport is waiting. Lena's stomach dropped. The patient from room 8. Yes, the lead man said. He's being moved, but before that he asked for you. Lena frowned. He doesn't know me. The lead man's expression softened a fraction. He knows enough. Vicky found her voice again, desperate. This is ridiculous. You can't just... A new voice came from the entrance. Calm, older, commanding without volume. That's exactly what they can do. Everyone turned. A woman in a dark suit stepped into the lobby. Silver hair pulled back neatly. No-nonsense posture. The kind of person who made administrators stand straighter without knowing why. Behind her, a man in a navy uniform entered, dress blues, medals arranged with quiet precision. The sight of him in that setting was like seeing a judge walk into a bar fight. People froze. The uniformed man's gaze went straight to Lena. Then to Vicky. Then back to Lena. The suited woman held up a badge. Special Agent Miriam Klein, Naval Criminal Investigative Service. Vicky looked like she might faint. This is a medical facility. You need permission. Klein's tone was polite, almost bored. We have it. She nodded at the lead man. Commander Reese status. Commander Reese, so that's what he was, answered without looking away from Lena. Patient stabilized. Nurse Sato is confirmed. We're ready. Lena's heart thudded. Because no one at Mercy Harbor called people Commander. No one at Mercy Harbor walked in with that kind of certainty. Klein's eyes settled on Vicky. And you are? Vicky swallowed. Charge Nurse Rourke, she's under investigation. Klein lifted a hand. Stop, tell me what happened. Vicky's mouth opened, but words stumbled. Because liars do fine when the only people listening are afraid. Authority changes the weather. Dr. Patel came into the lobby now, drawn by the commotion, eyes wide at the uniform. Klein looked at him. Doctor, you were present during the incident. Patel nodded, stunned. Yes. Did Nurse Sato act appropriately to save the patient's life? Patel didn't hesitate. Yes, she did. She recognized something I didn't. She pushed for the crash cart when... He glanced at Vicky, then continued anyway. When Charge refused. Vicky's face turned a mottled red. Klein's eyes didn't blink. Thank you, doctor. Then she turned to Lena, and her voice softened in a way that surprised everyone. Nurse Sato, she said, I'm sorry to interrupt the end of your shift. Lena held herself still. What is this? Klein studied her. It's overdue. Commander Reese stepped forward, and for the first time his posture shifted, less operational, more personal. He looked at Lena like he wasn't seeing a tired nurse in scrubs. He was seeing someone else. Ma'am, he said again, and this time it landed differently. Like a title earned. Lena's throat tightened. Please don't. Reese's jaw flexed. You don't get to tell us how to show respect. The lobby had gone silent. Even the vending machine seemed quieter. Klein's voice cut through, with the precision of a document being read aloud. Lena Naomi Sato, she said, formerly Hospital Corpsman, United States Navy, attached to Naval Special Warfare Medical Support, honorably discharged, commended for actions during an incident in Afghanistan involving emergency triage under hostile conditions. Vicky's mouth fell open. Patel stared at Lena like she'd turned into a different person. Lena's cheeks burned, not with pride. Wit. Exposure. Because she'd buried that part of her life under scrubs and quiet competence. She hadn't wanted anyone at Mercy Harbor to see it and start treating her like a mascot or a threat. Klein continued. You were requested specifically by the patient you treated tonight. Lena whispered, Who is he? Commander Reese answered, voice low. He's a retired flag officer. He doesn't like his name spoken in public, but he was at an event tonight where something happened that wasn't an accident. Lena's stomach tightened. He was poisoned. Reese nodded once. We believe so. Klein stepped closer, and he says you recognized it because you've seen it before. Lena's eyes flickered. Memory sharp as glass. A dusty courtyard, a man coughing, the smell of chemicals, her hands working while her mind stayed cold and focused. And that's when the room changed again, not from chaos but from understanding. Because suddenly Lena wasn't just East Coast anymore. She was someone with history. And history carries weight. Pause. If that reveal hit you the way it hit everyone in that lobby, comment ma'am below. It's a small word, but in this story it carries an entire life. And we're not done, because now the people who tried to humiliate her have to face consequences. Vicky tried to recover. That has nothing to do with hospital policy, she stammered. She's still. Klein turned her head slightly. You publicly accused her of insubordination after she saved a high-security patient's life. Vicky's voice rose. I didn't know who he was. Klein's expression remained cold. You didn't need to. You needed to know he was a patient in crisis. Patel swallowed hard. She called it, she did. Klein nodded. I've read the preliminary note from ICU. The attending documented that Nurse Sato's interventions were timely and appropriate. Vicky's eyes darted. I was following procedure. Commander Reese stepped toward her, not aggressive, just present. You refused to stage emergency equipment when requested, he said. Vicky's chin lifted, brittle. She didn't request, she demanded. Reese's eyes narrowed slightly. She recognized time sensitivity. That's called competence. Klein looked to Lena. Were you placed under investigation? Lena's voice was flat. Yes. Were you instructed to surrender your badge? Yes. Klein nodded, as if checking a box. Then this is now my concern as well, because your removal from duty endangered a protected patient, and because retaliation against a clinician for appropriate escalation is a hospital compliance matter. Vicky looked like she might cry. This is absurd. Klein's voice turned razor-sharp. What's absurd is that you thought a write-up would be the end of this. She pulled out a small recorder. I'm going to ask you questions. You will answer them. If you lie, we will know. Vicky's lips trembled. Dr. Patel stood silently, eyes on the floor, as if ashamed he hadn't intervened sooner. Klein began. At what time did Nurse Sato request emergency equipment? Vicky swallowed. I don't recall. Klein didn't blink. There are cameras in the hallway. Vicky's eyes widened. Klein continued. At what time did you file the write-up? Vicky's voice cracked. Around 6:45. Why then? Vicky's eyes darted to Lena. Because she was disrespectful. Klein's tone turned almost curious. Disrespectful or simply not obedient? Silence. Reese looked at Lena, his expression softer now. Ma'am, he said quietly, you shouldn't have had to fight that alone. Lena's voice barely held. I wasn't fighting, I was working. Reese nodded. That's what makes it worse. Klein turned back to Vicky. You understand this will be reviewed by hospital administration, by the nursing board if necessary, and by federal oversight due to patient status. Vicky's shoulders sagged, the first real crack in her armor. Klein wasn't done. And she added, there's another issue. The patient you treated tonight requested that you be personally thanked. Vicky's head snapped up. Thanked by who? Commander Reese's mouth tightened, almost like he didn't like what he was about to do. By the team that owes her, he said. He nodded once. And the three men who'd come in with him, men who had blended into the lobby like shadows, stepped forward in unison. They weren't wearing uniforms. But when they moved, you could feel the discipline in their bones. They stopped in front of Lena. And then, one after another, they placed a hand to their brow. Not sloppy, not casual. A crisp, unmistakable salute. In the middle of Mercy Harbor Medical Center's lobby. To a nurse in wrinkled scrubs, holding a plastic bag with her lunch container inside. The security guard's mouth hung open. A visitor in the waiting area whispered, "What is happening?" Lena's eyes went hot, she fought it. But emotion doesn't ask permission when it's earned. Commander Reese looked at her, voice low enough that only she could hear. "Ma'am," he said, "you did what you always do. You saved someone, and you stayed humble enough to let them think you were ordinary." Lena's voice shook. "Please stop calling me that." Reese's eyes softened. "No." Klein turned slightly so the lobby could hear. "Nurse Sato," she said, "you are not under investigation anymore. You are now a witness in a federal inquiry, and you are requested, not required, requested, to provide a statement." Vicky's nays looked weak. And in that moment, humiliation shifted. Not onto Lena. Onto the person who had tried to make her small. Pause. If you want the full public justice moment, procedural, realistic, and deeply satisfying, stay with me. And if you're the kind of person who believes quiet integrity deserves a spotlight, subscribe now. We're entering the part where consequences finally show up. Klein didn't let the moment become spectacle. That's what made it more powerful. She guided everyone to a small conference room near administration, glass walls, a long table, cold air conditioning. The kind of space designed for meetings that decided people's futures. Because that's exactly what this was. Hospital administration arrived quickly. The night supervisor, a man named Darrell Simmons, came in looking irritated until he saw the uniform and the NCIS badge. His face changed. "Agent," he started. Klein held up a hand. "Save it, will be brief." She laid out the facts calmly. Timeline: patient arrival, initial refusal to stage equipment, cardiac arrest, resuscitation, immediate punitive write-up. Darrell's eyes flicked to Vicky, then to Lena. "We take patient safety seriously," Darrell said, voice too smooth. Klein's gaze pinned him. Then prove it. Vicky tried to speak. This is being blown out of proportion. Daryl looked at her sharply. Vicky, stop. That alone was a shift. The man who usually protected the hospital from inconvenience was now protecting himself from association. Klein asked Dr. Patel to recount events. Patel did, voice steady, honest, and visibly relieved to finally say what he'd been thinking. Then Klein asked Lena. Lena didn't dramatize. She described clinical observations, the EKG, the patient's subtle signs, her decision-making, her request for resources. She said one line that landed like a verdict. I wasn't trying to undermine anyone, Lena said. I was trying to keep him alive long enough for the team to help. Silence. Daryl cleared his throat. Nurse Sato, I apologize for the distress. Klein cut him off. Not good enough. She turned a page in her folder. This hospital receives federal funding. Retaliation against staff for escalation, especially in emergent cases, is not a distress issue. Daryl swallowed, understood. Klein looked at Vicky. Did you file the write-up as retaliation? Vicky's eyes flashed. No. Klein's tone remained calm. Then why did you do it at shift change in front of staff? Vicky's voice rose, because she embarrassed me. The room went still. Vicky seemed to realize what she'd admitted, but it was too late. Klein nodded once like a judge hearing a confession. Thank you. Daryl's face tightened. Vicky. Vicky glared. Don't act like you haven't wanted her gone too. She doesn't fit. She makes people uncomfortable, she. Lena's eyes lifted, and her voice was quiet but clear. I make you uncomfortable because I don't flatter you, she said. I don't gossip, I don't beg, I just do the work. And that's when the room changed, again. Not because someone shouted. Because everyone suddenly saw the truth laid out cleanly, like instruments on a surgical tray. Klein closed the folder. Here, what's going to happen. She spoke like someone who had done this before. Charge Nurse Rourke will be placed on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. All documentation relating to Nurse Sato's alleged insubordination will be suspended and reviewed. Video footage will be secured. Witness statements will be collected. Any pattern of retaliation or safety compromise will be forwarded to the appropriate regulatory bodies. Daryl nodded too quickly. Yes, of course. Klein's eyes narrowed. And Nurse Sato will be reinstated immediately with a formal apology placed in her record and assurance that no retaliation will occur. Daryl hesitated, just a fraction. Commander Reese leaned forward slightly. Do you want to hesitate again? Daryl's face paled. No, no hesitation. Vicky's voice cracked. You can't do this to me. Klein looked at her. You did it to yourself. Then Reese stood and turned to Lena. His voice softened, but it carried. The Admiral asked me to tell you something, he said. Lena's throat tightened again. Reese continued. He said, tell her I remembered her hands. Tell her I remembered that she treated me like a person, not a rank. Lena blinked hard. Reese added, he also said he's alive because you didn't. Let a title stop you from acting. Lena's voice came out thin. I didn't know. Reese nodded. That's why he trusted you. Pause. If you're feeling that satisfaction, the kind that comes when the truth is finally spoken out loud, hit like. Not for drama, for justice. Because stories like this remind us what professionalism should look like when no one's watching. The rest moved quickly, because once authority entered, the hospital's usual slow dance of delays vanished. Vicky was escorted out, not in handcuffs, not in a humiliating spectacle. Just a quiet walk with HR and security, her badge clipped off like a symbol losing power. That was more realistic than revenge fantasies. Consequences in real life often look like doors closing, not fists flying. And for someone like Vicky, who lived on status, that quiet removal was devastating. Lena was offered a chair, offered water, offered apologies that suddenly sounded sincere because they were now necessary. Daryl tried again. Nurse Sato, we value your service. Lena didn't let bitterness rise. She didn't gloat. She just said, then value it when it's inconvenient. Klein's eyes flicked to her with something like approval. Later in the ICU hallway, Lena stood outside the patient's room. The two men who'd brought him in were there, along with Commander Reese. The atmosphere was controlled, but beneath it ran something like gratitude. Reese looked at Lena. "He's awake," he asked if you'd come in. Lena hesitated. This wasn't her world anymore. Not that world with ranks and salutes and hidden threats. She'd chosen the hospital because it was supposed to be simpler. But the truth was, the stakes followed you when you were the kind of person who didn't abandon them. She stepped into the room. The man in the bed looked smaller now, drained by the event, but his eyes were sharp. He studied her, then gave the faintest smile. "You're still working," he rasped. Lena swallowed. "Yes, sir." He shook his head slightly. "Do sir me, not after that." Lena felt a laugh try to rise, small and disbelieving. The man's gaze softened. "I didn't forget you," he said. "I just didn't know where life took you." Lena's voice was careful. "It took me here." He nodded once. "Good, this place needs people like you." Lena's chest tightened. "They tried to remove me." His eyes sharpened. "I heard." Reese stepped forward. "Admiral." The man lifted a hand. "No speeches." He looked at Lena again. "They call you ma'am." Lena's cheeks warmed. "They shouldn't." The Admiral's mouth twitched. "They should call you what you are." Lena frowned slightly. "And what's that?" He spoke with quiet certainty. "A professional who doesn't care who's watching." Lena held his gaze, and for the first time that night, she felt the tension in her shoulders loosen. Because someone had finally named the thing she'd been trying to protect. Her integrity. Pause. If you've made it this far, you're the kind of listener who appreciates the slow, earned payoff. Subscribe and stick around, because the aftermath matters just as much as the confrontation. Respect isn't just given back in a moment, it's rebuilt. The next morning, Mercy Harbor's staff felt the ripple. It started with whispers. NCIS was here. Someone got walked out. Was it Vicky? Then more quietly, did Lena really used to be military? Lena kept her head down. She finished her documentation, checked her patients, and did what she always did. Worked. But the air around her had changed. People who used to talk over her now paused to listen. A nurse who'd once rolled her eyes at Lena's carefulness now asked, "Can you show me how you caught that so fast?" Dr. Patel found Lena near the med room. He looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I should have backed you up sooner." Lena studied him a moment, then nodded. "You backed me up when it counted." Patel swallowed. "Still, you didn't deserve that." "No," Lena agreed simply. "I didn't." There was something in that honesty that made Patel look both relieved and humbled. Administration scheduled a patient safety review that suddenly included real questions, real documentation, and real accountability. A policy memo went out emphasizing escalation protocols and anti-retaliation measures. And for once, it wasn't just words. Because everyone knew, someone powerful had been nearly lost and a quiet nurse had saved him. But the moral wasn't that rank mattered. The moral was that competence did. And that when systems punish competence, they rot from the inside. A few days later, Lena was called to the main lobby again. Not by Vicky. By Darrell Simmons himself. He stood near the front desk, awkward in his suit, holding a folder. "Nurse Sato," he said, voice stiff, "we've completed an initial review." Lena waited. Darrell cleared his throat. "Your write-up has been formally rescinded. Your record will reflect commendation for appropriate 8 escalation and patient care." He hesitated, then added, "And I'm apologizing personally." Lena took the folder, expression calm. "Thank you." Darrell nodded quickly, as if grateful she wasn't making it harder for him. As he walked away, Lena noticed something else. The security guard, same one from that night, watched her with a new kind of respect. He didn't say anything at first. Then he murmured, almost to himself, "Ma'am." Lena paused. She turned and the guard stiffened, realizing he'd spoken. Lena looked at him for a long second, then said quietly, "You don't have to do that." The guard swallowed. "Yes, ma'am." Lena exhaled, and for the first time a small, genuine smile cracked through her exhaustion. Because it wasn't about being worshipped. It was about being seen. Pause. If you've ever wished the world would finally recognize the people who do the hard work without applause, leave a comment about someone in your life who deserves that kind of respect. And if you want another story like this one, hit subscribe, because this channel is built for earned vindication. A week later, a small ceremony happened, quiet, not publicized. No press, no dramatic speeches. Just a handful of people in a conference room, an administrator, a Navy representative, and Lena in clean scrubs because she'd come straight from shift. Commander Reese was there again, but this time without the urgent edge. He carried a simple plaque and an envelope. "Admiral's directive," he said, offering the envelope. "A letter of appreciation and a commendation." Lena stared at it like it was a foreign object. "I didn't do it for this," she said. Reese nodded. "We know." He held her gaze. "That's why you get it." She took the envelope, hand steady, heart not. Daryl Simmons spoke, clearing his throat. "We're also offering you a formal position as clinical preceptor for ED orientation, with an increase." Lena blinked. "You're promoting me." Daryl looked uncomfortable. "We're recognizing your skill." Lena's voice stayed measured. "Recognize skill in others too, not just when someone important is involved." Daryl nodded, chastened. "Understood." After the meeting, Reese walked with Lena toward the employee exit. The same doors, the same threshold. But Lena felt like a different person crossing it. Reese stopped near her car. The morning sun was bright, reflecting off windshields like tiny flares. He hesitated. "Ma'am, Lena." She looked at him. "What?" Reese's expression turned serious. "You should know. The investigation into the exposure is ongoing. You may be contacted again." Lena nodded. "I'll cooperate." Reese studied her. "Are you okay?" Lena almost laughed. Because what kind of question was that after everything? But then she realized he wasn't asking about the adrenaline. He was asking about the humiliation, the unfairness, the way she'd been made small. Lena exhaled slowly. "I'm steady," she said. Reese nodded once, satisfied. "Good." Then, unexpectedly, he did something that made Lena's throat tighten all over again. He saluted her. Not because she demanded it. Not because she needed it. Because he wanted the world to understand something simple. Respect isn't a gift for the loud. It's recognition for the worthy. Lena held his gaze, then gave the smallest nod in return, not a salute, not a performance. Just acknowledgement. And as Reese walked away, Lena stood there in the bright morning light, hearing the faint echo of boots in her memory, and feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time. Vindication. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind that settles into your bones and says, "You were right to stay good. You were right to stay calm. You were right to keep serving."